This is Kathleen Nicole O'Neill with House of Cartomancy, and I'm here today to do an unboxing video that I am very excited about. It is one that I have been waiting to do for quite a long time, and it has just never been the right time because I recently moved from Sarasota, Florida to College Park, Maryland to start a philosophy PhD program at the University of Maryland. And so I haven't really had time to make all of the unboxing videos I've wanted to, and to unbox all the decks that I've wanted to unbox, and to do all of the things with tarot and spirituality in this channel that I've really wanted to do. So I'm really excited to kind of get back into the swing of things now that I've started my program and we've moved up here and I kind of have more of a regular schedule now. So the deck I'm going to be unboxing today is the Game of Thrones Tarot. And I had pre-ordered this deck from the moment that I heard about it. I was very, very excited about it. I'll talk a little bit about my relationship with Game of Thrones before I open the deck, so y'all kind of understand where I'm coming from as I'm doing this unboxing. Basically, my best friend, roommate, platonic life partner, Patrick, he was the one that really got me into Game of Thrones, although I had some other really close friends that watched the show and would talk a lot about it, and of course, you'd see all these posts about it on social media, and you'd, hear a lot about it just out and about. And so, it was really Patrick, though, that really got me into Game of Thrones. I have not read the books, and I intend to read the books at some point. It's not that I'm against reading the books for any reason. It's just that I have not had time to sit and read them, and I imagine that once I start, I'll want to read them all at once. And so there's so much that I've needed and wanted to read in reference to school and other things that I've had going on, politics, a book I'm writing about youth liberation issues. I have to read a lot of things for that. I have to read a lot for my philosophy program. I've been reading a lot of dog books. Since I recently became a first-time pupper parent to a little precious Bichon Frise puppy named Dixie. So I'm just saying there's a lot of other stuff that has been more important for me to read, I guess, at that moment than this really long book series that, I would want to read all in one go, and that I know is a major commitment. So I have not read the books. Patrick has read the books, and we've talked about the books. I have other close friends that have read the books and have talked with me about the books and things like that. But personally, I have not read them yet. I plan to. It's just not something that has happened yet. But I have watched all the seasons that have been produced so far of the show. And Game of Thrones was a show that it did take a little while for me to get into it. I was not one of those people that just always loved fantasy. I was never a big fan of Lord of the Rings. It was more something that I accompanied guys that I dated in high school to the movies to see, and really pretended to be more enthusiastic about it than I was because I wanted some action, not really because I thought it was really all that great. For whatever reason, it just really didn't speak to me. And so I kind of thought, Game of Thrones might be that way. I kind of thought I might not get into it as much. But it took me a while to warm up to the show. But once I did, I completely fell in love with it. And it was very different than what I'd encountered with a lot of the fantasy that really had not resonated for me as much. I think that one thing that really spoke to me about Game of Thrones was the way that the characters are very morally complex, and they're not black and white. And as you go through the show, you really learn to see some, beautiful things about somebody that may be in many ways an ugly person, or you may see some really kind of troubling things about an otherwise heroic character. So there's a lot of moral ambiguity in a lot of the characters, which I found to be really interesting, and I think that really lends itself richly to the system of meaning that goes along with the tarot, because tarot was all about moral ambiguity. Tarot was all about those contrasts of dark and light, good and evil, but it not always being totally black and white. And I believe I've heard Kellyanne Maddox say that with every tarot card, a good tarot reader knows that with that card, there is both a positive aspect of it that is joyous and wonderful, no matter how dark or scary it might seem, and even no matter how positive a card might seem, no matter how, superficially just beautiful and joyous and, upbeat it might seem, there's still a dark underside to it as well. And so I think that that's one of the truths of tarot that really interested me in learning about tarot as a system of divination and a system of meaning making and a way to think about different things in life. And it's also one of the things that really drew me to Game of Thrones, and that really, pulled me into the show, was seeing the moral ambiguity in a lot of the characters and the situations they found themselves in, and just the complexity of these characters and their situations. Another thing that I really liked about the show that was different than a lot of fantasy that I had previously encountered is it seemed to do a better job of representing female characters. Watching Lord of the Rings, it was pretty much all male characters, and I think maybe there was a lady with some elf ears running around doing some stuff. I don't know. But it never really spoke to me, I guess, as somebody that identifies strongly as being female. It just seemed like a very masculine coded world, and that there wasn't a lot of space for women in it. Whereas in the world of Westeros, you have a lot of characters that are female and very interesting and dynamic and complicated characters, just like the male characters. The characters don't all play to gender stereotypes. They're all rich, unique human beings regardless of their gender, and I really like that. Same thing with sexuality. You have gay and lesbian and bisexual characters represented in a way that I found really refreshing. And as a bisexual person, I really liked seeing that aspect of my identity and my community represented in this show as well, because we know that queer people exist in pretty much any milieu you can imagine. So if you have a historical fantasy world, of course there's going to be queer people, just like there's going to be heterosexual people. And one thing I also liked was the presence of characters with disabilities. A lot of my friends that are big Game of Thrones fans are really interested in how disability plays out in the show. I know that Tyrion is really someone that a lot of my friends that are dwarves in the little person community really see as a character that is just very empowering and not the way that little people have often been depicted in the media. So a lot of times little people have been depicted in, more demeaning ways, or they've kind of been seen as a joke, or they haven't really gotten to be, these multifaceted, sexy, daring, charismatic characters. And, that's what Tyrion is. And so he means a lot to a lot of folks in the disability community that I know. And I think that's really cool. And, you have other themes of disability that pop up throughout the show, with Bran losing his ability to move around. And you have Hodor, who obviously dealt with some kind of intellectual impairment. You had Shireen Baratheon and Jorma and their plight with grayscale. So issues of disease and disability come up in the show a lot, and really kind of, I think, lead to sort of a very rich sort of texturing of the show. And I really like how a lot of the characters with disabilities are presented. As a person that identifies as a member of the disability community myself, I have invisible disabilities. I'm a chronic kidney stone former, and I also have a mobility impairment. It's really important to me to see those representations, and to really see media creators get those representations right. So there's just a lot of things that I love about Game of Thrones. And so I kind of just wanted to talk you through that before I started on the unboxing, so that you kind of knew what background that I would be bringing to this unboxing video and what background I wouldn't be bringing to it. I'm very, very excited to unbox this tarot, because I think Game of Thrones and the tarot are just two systems of myth and magic and meaning making and psychology that just fit together beautifully. And I'm really excited to see what we have here. So you can see I have not even unwrapped the box. On the front it says Game of Thrones Tarot Deck and Guidebook, and it's got 3 cards pictured on the front in this nice sturdy box. It's got the Hermit depicted as Bran, the Queen of Swords as Cersei, and Daenerys as the Empress. So already I really like those 3 choices and am really inspired by them. On the back it says, explore Game of Thrones with this beautifully rendered and wholly original tarot card deck. Includes 78 card deck and a hardcover guidebook. And so we have the Star, the Hanged Man, Page of Swords, Judgment, the Magician, And it says the design is by Michael Morris and the text of the book is by Liz Dean, and the illustrations are by Craig Goss, or is it Coss? I think it's Coss. Illustrations by Craig Coss, and this is put out by Chronicle Books. And so here's what the back of the deck looks like. So here I am, finally opening it up. I'm so excited to do this finally. This is a really gorgeous, nice set. See, it opens so beautifully. I really like that. Beautiful colors. Okay, so it has space right here for this guidebook. So if you get this deck right away, I think it's safe to say you won't have to find alternative means of storing it. This box is a keepsake box and is definitely an appropriate way to store your deck. So you have this little hardback guidebook. It has an introduction, how to use this book and deck, preparing for a reading, shuffling and choosing your cards. Has some spreads that are Game of Thrones themed, which is really cool, and I might have to try some of those. And then it has the major arcana, so it has all the major arcana cards with some keywords in reference to them, and an upright meaning and a reverse meaning, along with a little reproduction of the picture. So that is for all of the major arcana cards. From the minor arcana, they have swords, spears, coins, and cups. So they have a little bit less information about each of the minor arcana cards, but they still have a little reproduction of the card and key meanings and upright meaning. I think it's interesting that they do change things slightly with the suits. So instead of wands, they have spears. And so that is how they're representing the element of fire that's traditionally represented in tarot. Excuse me. See, I'm just looking through this little book, and so this is what it kind of looks like when you open it. And say for the Page of Cups, it'll have key meanings, upright meaning, reverse meaning, and it'll have a small little depiction of the card, and then underneath it it will tell exactly what's going on in that card. So for the Page of Cups, for instance, it says, if Winterfell, Bran Stark holds a cup with a wave symbol, the fish completes the sigil of Tully, his mother's house. So it, provides information about what characters depicted and what they're doing, and I think that's very helpful with a show and a book series that has this very expansive universe with so many characters, and it's very, very easy to forget some names or get some family lines confused or crossed. So this is very helpful, and I really like this little guidebook. Very beautiful. Now, let's get to the cards. I'm just taking off this wrapping with my scissors. For those that are interested in what the back of the cards look like, this is what the back of the cards look like. You have all these swords that are very striking and kind of represent that chair that sort of makes up the centerpiece of the show. So the first card we have in the major arcana is the Fool, and we have Tyrion represented as the Fool. And I think that that is a very appropriate choice, because the Fool in tarot is not necessarily a foolish person. It's not necessarily somebody that's ridiculous or anything like that. Tarot is all about the Fool's journey. And in some ways, you can read the Game of Thrones series as being about Tyrion's journey and a lot of the things that he comes to learn about in reference to how to be a strong man and how to be a leader, how to provide wise counsel, how to distance himself from some of the problematic aspects of his family and still be his own person. And he really kind of has a lot of involvement with a lot of the different houses in the world of the show. So I think having him as the Fool is very appropriate in terms of it's sort of his journey that is depicted in a lot of ways in the show. And he very much has a lot of the characteristics that kind of go along with the Fool card in tarot as well, which is being open to new experience, being able to kind of confront the unexpected. So I think that was probably an appropriate choice. And here we have the Magician. This strikes me as another appropriate choice. I'm going to see what the book says about him. So yeah, this is Littlefinger, and he is definitely a magician in a lot of ways. He's definitely an individual that manipulates things in the world in order to get what he wants and to create situations that he finds helpful for his own ends. even if it involves being very manipulative. So I think that was a very interesting choice for the magician, and kind of shows the dark side of the magician in a way, but also some of the cool things that the magician can do. And also, I want to say these cards are really well made. They're very beautiful. Like they have almost like a sheen to them. Just gorgeous cards. For the High Priestess, we have Melisandre, which is, of course, appropriate because she is very much a High Priestess. She is a witch. She is a magic worker, and she deals in the realm of secrets. A lot of times she works in mysterious ways, and I think that choosing her for the priestess card makes a lot of sense because as the priest of the Lord of Light, she definitely embodies that kind of magical sort of not quite out in the open kind of authority that this card represents. So I like that choice as well. I don't mean to go through every single card, but I might with the major arcana just because these characters are really obviously interesting and meaningful to me already, as I'm sure they are to everybody else that has read the books or watched the show or both. Daenerys is the Empress. I love this. And the Empress is a figure of fertility, which is interesting because in the show we learn that Daenerys was cursed and she could not become pregnant after she had a run-in with a witch earlier in the history of the show. And so it's kind of interesting that she represents this card that has such strong fertility themes, but I also think it is appropriate because she is a strong female ruler, and fertility is not always about an ability to produce a child. There's other ways to be fertile. So I think that it's interesting to think about the card in light of that, but I really do like that choice. And it's probably the choice I would have made too. We have Jon Snow as the Emperor, of course. And I think, kind of seeing him as Daenerys' consort sort of kind of tells us the direction the show is going in, and maybe gives us some hints about the direction that the show's going to take. But yeah, so Jon Snow as the Emperor, not really surprising. Lord Varys is our Hierophant. And so I'm curious why they chose him for the Hierophant. And let's see what they say. Lord Varys, the Spider, or Master of Whispers, is the Hierophant, or Priest of the Mysteries. The birds behind him represent his vast network of child agents, and at the screen itself, a veil of secrets. Just as a priest mediates between heaven and earth, Varys mediates between his flock of birds and the powers that be, politicking against the crown for the sake of progress. He saves Tyrion Lannister's life because Tyrion, he says, is one of the few people alive who could make this country a better place. Varys stands outside the mundane world, and he is above the earthly desires of men. The card's number 5 is linked with Mercury, planet of communication, which reflects Varys' early role as spy master to the monarch. Upright meaning, the Hierophant has diverse meanings, from traditional religion and spiritual knowledge to educational opportunities. Overall, the card denotes unity, connecting mind, body, and soul, or making a commitment. The card can also represent following or becoming an inspiring spiritual leader, mentor, or teacher. Reversed meaning, the reversed Hierophant is the bad teacher or leader whose power trips, disrupt groups or communities. More generally, the card can show wrong direction. You may need to withdraw and choose another option. Key meaning, unity, orthodoxy, divinity, divine law, connection, alliance, commitment. So I think that's kind of an interesting choice for Hierophant. I'm not sure that that is the choice for Hierophant that I would have made, but I'm going to think about that. That's probably the first one that I'm thinking I'm not quite sure I would have made that choice, but it's an interesting choice. You have Ygritte and Jon Snow as the lovers, which is just absolutely precious. And here we have the Chariot, rallying the Dothraki Khalasar. Daenerys Targaryen cries, "Will you give me the 7 kingdoms?" The warriors, Eric's aloft, roar their ascent to conquer Westeros and sail wooden horses across the narrow sea. The Dothraki and Drogon represent power that must be masterfully controlled if the mission is to succeed. The horses are white and dark, which in Taro symbolize the tension between the light and dark aspects of the self and the ever-changing nature of our experiences. The card's number, Mystical 7, stands for potential greatness and the successful completion of a chapter. So I like the Chariot being one of her dragons. I really love what they chose for strength. And that is Lady Brienne of Tarth. And I think that that is just a perfect encapsulation of what the strength card is about. I really like Bran as the Hermit. Here's their Wheel of Fortune. Justice is Eddard Stark, which is so appropriate because the show really begins with him taking a stand for justice, and we see the consequences, good and bad, that come out of that for him, for his children, for the entire kingdom of Westeros. And I think that depicting him as justice really does justice to this card and what it means, and really allows us to think about it. So here's what the Hanged Man card looks like, and here's what the book says about it. The Bolton sigil is the Hanged Man, while the flayed man evokes the torture of Theon Greyjoy by Ramsay Bolton. It may also symbolize life in suspension. The figure must simply endure a necessary delay before he can move forward. During this wait, he is initiated into a higher level of consciousness. He perceives the world from a different perspective and experiences a powerful rebirth. When Theon Greyjoy casts off the withering persona of Reek, he reclaims his lost identity and saves Sansa Stark. The card is numbered 12, which reduces to 3, the number of creation. Through the Hanged Man's experience of altered reality, a new future emerges. So that's very interesting. Of course, you know how they had to go with the death card. Little Arya. Could it be anyone else? I think not. Samwell Tarly is Temperance. I really like that. Ramsay Bolton is the devil. That is entirely appropriate. He is a very evil man. And if you watch the show or read the books, you will know that he is just cruel and hateful and evil. And I think this absolutely makes sense. Here's the tower. And it says, when Bran Stark climbed the decrepit tower at Winterfell to see Jaime Lannister and his twin sister Cersei having relations, Jaime pushes Bran out, concluding, the things I do for love. The tower represents a construct, the lie of Cersei's marriage to Robert Baratheon and the paternity of her children. Yet Jaime's cruel actions cannot protect their secret. The old Tower of Lies is already unstable. The Lannister Baratheon power is about to crumble. In Teyro lore, the tower stands for downfall in the light of truth. Bran sees the truth of the siblings' relationship, which, if known, will bring about destruction. The card's number, 16, reduces to 7, the Chariot, the card of control. With the tower, we have no control over events. We suffer and see truth in the wreckage. So I like that. That's a really appropriate way to depict the tower within the world of meaning of the show. Sansa is the star. And I think that that is very appropriate. The book says Sansa is the star which holds the message of hope. Trapped in Winterfell by her sadistic husband Ramsay Bolton, Sansa has had the opposite of the fairy tale life she imagined. That is very true. And yet, she still continues to grow into a beautiful and virtuous and intelligent young woman. And her development over the course of the show is really interesting and gratifying to watch. Here's how they're depicting the moon. And what the book says is, in the high hall of the Eyrie, the moon door, a portal to deadly rocks hundreds of feet below. Their craters like the surface of the moon itself. The moon door is a symbol of cruelty, uncertainty, and illusion. Will we endure, or as Lysa Arryn says to Sansa Stark, be broken like eggs dropped on the floor? So they're representing the moon with the moon door. I did not recognize what they were doing at first, but I like it. And I really like them tying that back to the traditional tarot meaning of the moon, of how it can be a symbol of uncertainty and illusion. And certainly you will feel some uncertainty wondering, will I be put through that moon door? If you find yourself in that situation. The Sun card features Drogon, which is one of Daenerys' dragons. And he's just basking in the rays of the sun and just being a beautiful, happy dragon. The Night King is Judgment, and I think that is very appropriate. He's the leader of the White Walkers, and he really does kind of represent a final reckoning for all of the characters and the houses in Westeros. And basically, what he represents is this massive ecological environmental threat that has the potential to destroy this entire society, such that the things that they're squabbling over in the first place really won't be meaningful if they cannot get a handle on how to control this menace. And so I think that using this as the Judgment card is very appropriate. A map of Westeros is the world. And the book says, a map of Westeros is depicted with the creatures of the sigils of houses Stark, Baratheon, Lannister, and Targaryen. The four sigils echo the symbols of the four evangelists on the Rider-Waite-Smith world card, known as the Tetramorph: Matthew the Man, Mark the Lion, Luke the Ox, and John the Eagle. The animals represent the four corners of the Westerosi world. The card's number, 21, reduces to 3, the number of the Empress, Daenerys Targaryen, who vows to break the cycle of oppression and claim the Seven Kingdoms, fulfilling her destiny. The world is also the final card in the major arcana sequence, before we return to Zero and the Fool, who is reborn into a new world. So I like that. So then we come to the minor arcana. So I don't think I'll be showing every single card in the minor arcana, but I will be showing some. So the first ones we have just are the suit of spears, which are a stand-in for wands in this deck. So, the Six of Wands in the Rider-Waite-Smith Tarot typically depicts a person that is coming into town, having a victory party on a horse, and they go with sort of a similar theme with the Six of Spheres and with Daenerys on this horse in this card. Let's see what they say about it in the book. Take a well-deserved bow. The harmonious six shows appreciation and success. You are recognized and rewarded for your work or your community, educational, or sporting achievements. And this book is so nice and just so accessible, and it's just so easy to find, like, what goes with the cards. So, for our Page of Spears, we have a young, unsullied individual. And it says, a young unsullied takes a moment to look at a bird in flight at the outskirts of Marine. The Knight of Spears is Jaime Lannister. That's very interesting. It says the knight is dynamic, creative, and driven. Applied to a situation, he shows speed and action. So, you may grow progress, you may travel physically, or find that a stuck situation is suddenly freed up. Exciting new projects, a new job, and even a whirlwind romance are possible now. This knight often appears in readings to show moving home. So yeah, I was really interested to see how they would depict the court cards. The Queen of Spears is, of course, Daenerys. And we have Eddard Stark as the King of Spears. So now we're moving on to the Suit of Cups. So this is just a beautiful Cups card. I love how they depict the Two of Cups. And they depict it with the wedding vows that are common in Westeros. Father, smith, warrior, mother, maiden, crone, stranger. I am hers, and she is mine from this day until the end of my days. they've chosen for the Four of Cups is very striking. So the Four of Cups is a card that depicts listlessness and dissatisfaction traditionally in tarot. And what we have here is Sansa Stark sitting despondently under the Winterfell heart tree. Here's Peter Baelish's plans for their life together should he take the Iron Throne. And I think that's a very, very appropriate way to illustrate that card. I'm really, really pleased with this deck. I think it's really difficult to bring these two systems of meaning together. The tarot, which is rich in its own meanings, and these characters in Westeros and their universe, and it's rich in its own meanings as well. And so how are you going to wed those things in a way that is true to both? And it seems like the people that were involved with this deck really took that seriously, and they really understood the tarot and really made, I think, really wonderful choices for the most part, in terms of how they've chosen to pair different characters and scenes with different cards. It really has come together beautifully, it seems, and I was really hoping that would be the case, because I think, Game of Thrones is, something that, for me as a philosopher, it really kind of, gets me thinking about ethics and spirituality, and it really kind of touches on a lot of things that are very important and core to who I am. And tarot is that way as well. And so I really was hoping that this deck would kind of marry these two systems of meaning making together in a really rich way, and it seems that that is exactly what has happened, and kind of opened up new possibilities of meaning, while at the same time retaining a lot of the classical meanings that we find within the tarot. And so I'm really thrilled with how this was done. This could have been a total disaster, and I'm really pleased with the care that was shown to really tarot as an art form in creating this. So we have the Five of Cups, and in her chamber at the Red Keep, Cersei Lannister mourns the loss of her children. So the Five of Cups is a card that is all about sadness and loss. And Cersei Lannister mourning the deaths of her children obviously is a very, meaningful and appropriate depiction of that. I love the Seven of Cups. We see Bran Stark working, and he's seeing visions of past and future events in Seven Cups. And this is very much in keeping with the way the Seven of Cups card is traditionally depicted. But I really like having it involve Bran and the additional meanings that that brings to this card. The Nine of Cups features Samwell Tarly, and he's sitting under 9 cups at the library of the Citadel, the seat of the Order of Maesters. And he just looks so pleased with himself, as he's right to be. And this is very similar to how the Nine of Cups is typically depicted in the tarot. Going back to the wider Waite Smith tradition. And I just think Samwell with his books is absolutely a perfect way to depict this card, because he even kind of looks like the pudgy, very self-satisfied man that we find on the Rider-Waite Smith card. So, like, this is brilliant. Like, I really love, like I said, how like they really wed the meanings of the two systems together, and they find the places where they naturally intersect and bring them together. And I'm just really, really pleased with that. So our Page of Cups is Bran. And the book says, as an individual, this page is a sensitive, imaginative young person. He or she may also be psychic. Applied to a situation, the card heralds a creative phase, plus surprise, social opportunities, and friendships. Meeting the page is also a sign that a new relationship is on the horizon. There is also good news about children and projects. Sir Loras Tyrell, in full regalia, about to face Gregor the Mountain Clegane in the Hands Tournament at King's Landing, is what we have for the Knight of Cups. Romantic and idealistic, this night may enchant you, so this card can show you the possibility of new love. This knight loves being the lover. Equally, you may project onto him or her the dreamy qualities you ideally want before you commit. Applied to a situation, there's a proposal or an invitation for you, but assess carefully what is on offer. We see Sansa here being very reflective as the Queen of Cups. And we see Jon Snow as the King of Cups. And I really like Jon Snow as the King of Cups. I think that that is a very appropriate place for him to be in the tarot. So now we move on to the Suit of Swords. We have Arya here with the Two of Swords, and you can just see how conflicted she is. So they really stuck with the classic imagery with the Three of Swords card. And so I wanted to see what the book said about that. And for upright meaning, it says the sword hilts represent houses Stark, Lannister, and Baratheon, three warring factions. The suffering heart symbolizes the impact of a revelation, sorrow, betrayal, and heartbreak, the card's meaning. You may see a painful truth, but you will know exactly where you stand from now on. An additional meaning is intense stress and the need to strike at the heart of a problem. Three swords pierce the flaming heart of Arhalor. The central sword is Oathkeeper, used by Bran of Tarth to kill Stannis Baratheon. So that's very powerful, and like I said, I love how they're taking the meaning that's already there and wedding it to the tarot in this very beautiful and natural way. Sometimes you see decks that are done in reference to popular culture or other television shows or movies or books or what have you, and it really seems like they were just kind of out to make a quick buck, or they didn't really understand what the tarot was about. But it seems like that there was a lot of care that was put into this, and I'm very, very pleased with it. Here we have the Four of Swords. And what's going on here is a dead knight is tended by one of the Silent Sisters in order devoted to the stranger for death. And so this is a card that's all about rest and recuperation, and they've held on to that meaning in this card. In the Five of Swords, Bran Stark yields Winterfell to Theon Greyjoy. This five shows loss and even humiliation in a war of words. And there's an edge of cruelty too, as your opponent seems to take pleasure in your defeat. The cards can signify fighting with institutions, within families, at work, or within other group situations, rather than one-to-one combat. It's clear that this battle is not worth continuing. Withdraw now with dignity, rather than suffer more harsh treatment. So the Six of Swords is the Traveler's card, and you see Arya seeking refuge on the Six of Swords card. Arya's moving on. I don't want to go through every single card in the deck, but wow, I mean, I could, because all of them are just so meaningful. So, the Page of Swords is one of the Sons of the Harpy, the masked insurgents fighting the anti-slavery decree of Daenerys Targaryen. So that's an interesting choice. Ramsay Bolton is the Knight of Swords. Cersei Lannister is the Queen of Swords. I think is very appropriate. She's often talked about as a woman of sorrows and a woman that has dealt with a lot of tragedies and yet is still very intelligent and quick-witted and tough-minded. And I think that Cersei is absolutely the Queen of Swords. And they chose the Night King for the King of Swords. That's kind of interesting. So now we move on to the Suit of Cups. The Two of Coins. A Lannister always pays his debts. I love it. For the Five of Coins, we have Arya Stark, blind and begging on the streets of Braavos. Beside her is the wooden staff the waif throws to her before they enter combat. And that is really appropriate in terms of how this card is typically depicted in Rider-Waite-Smith derivative decks, and I really think this choice makes a lot of sense. You have Varys again for Six of Coins, and the book says that this is a feel-good card. You're either able to be generous to others, helping out friends, or making a charitable donation, or you're the one receiving money, perhaps as an award or bonus. So this is very much in keeping with traditional tarot imagery for the Six of Coins, which is all about someone throwing around his largesse and giving away his coins. Okay, I really love the Nine of Coins. So the Nine of Coins is a card that is all about prosperity and fulfillment and independence, and it depicts a woman, and she's got these birds in the traditional Rider-Waite-Smith tarot, and she's very much her own person. She's kind of in a situation of luxury, and yet she's very much standing on her own. And the Nine of Coins in this deck is Daenerys Targaryen, and she's holding one of her young dragons in a fruit-laden garden in Karth. So that is absolutely just a perfect way to kind of, I guess, sort of like layer on the additional meanings and kind of wed the meanings that we associate with Daenerys being in Karth with her dragons, with the meanings behind the Nine of Coins, or the Nine of Pentacles in the traditional tarot. I'm very impressed. The Ten of Coins in the garden at King's Landing, the wedding table, laden with Tyrell rose coins, awaits King Joffrey and Marjorie Tyrell. So, Tyrion is depicted as the Page of Coins. Bran of Tarth is depicted as the Knight of Coins. I like having a lady knight. The Queen of Coins is Lady Olenna Tyrell. That seems very appropriate. And the King of Coins is none other than Peter Baelish. So, we have gone through these cards now, and I have to say I am very, very pleased with this deck. I have waited forever to unbox it, and I was really hoping that a lot of care was taken to make sure that the meanings behind both the characters and situations in Westeros, as well as the tarot itself, was not shortchanged. And I was very, very pleased with how these two systems of meaning were wedded together in such a beautiful way. And this is such an accessible guidebook, a really good guidebook. So you can tell that whoever has been working on this project definitely knows and reveres the tarot tradition, and is also somebody that is deeply enmeshed in the world of Westeros and the characters within that world and the things that they represent. So I am just really, really pleased with this deck. On the whole, I'm pleased with the packaging. It is really beautiful. I'm going to be storing it in this packaging, and this is going to be a tarot deck that I think I'm going to be using, and that it's going to be easy for me to use because it does have those rich additional meanings that automatically come to mind in reference to these characters and these situations and these symbols that come out of this universe. If you are not interested in tarot, but you're interested in Game of Thrones, then this might be an interesting way into the tarot for you, because you can kind of see how these worlds of meaning meet together. And if you are a tarot person that is not into Game of Thrones, then you should get into Game of Thrones, watch the show, and then go buy this deck and see all the ways that the meaning is very richly rewarded in terms of how the cards match up. So I'm very pleased with this. I really, really like this. I think this would make a wonderful gift for somebody for Christmas, for Halloween, for a birthday, for Hanukkah, for any kind of event coming up. Just a beautiful gift. And I'm really, really pleased with how this deck turned out. Some of the choices I wouldn't have made, of course, because it's not, my deck. I didn't make it. But I really feel like the choices that were made make sense, and that they can be rationalized, and that they can be defended. And it's just altogether just a really, really beautiful deck, and care was definitely shown in making it what it is. So, that being said, I'm going to sign off for now. I definitely can recommend this deck wholeheartedly. It is the Game of Thrones Tarot deck and guidebook. And so it's available on Amazon, in bookstores, metaphysics stores. It is just a beautiful gift, and I really love what they did with this. So, thank you so much for watching. Feel free to leave a comment, and I'll see y'all around. Bye.